The dilapidated structure of St. Mary's Asylum loomed over the desolate landscape, its silhouette a jagged scar against the eerie glow of the hunter's moon. It was midnight. The wind howled like a banshee, whipping through the skeletal branches of the gnarled trees that surrounded the asylum, casting dancing shadows that seemed to writhe and contort like tortured souls. The air was thick with the smell of decay and the promise of unspeakable horrors. The asylum had been abandoned for decades, its once pristine walls now stained with the passage of time and the horrors it had witnessed. It was a place where the veil between reality and nightmare was thin, where the echoes of madness lingered in the air like a noxious gas. Tonight the asylum would claim new victims. Four friends, Jake, Emily, Ben, and Chloe, stood at the rusted iron gates of the asylum, their youthful bravado a thin veneer over the fear that gnawed at the edges of their courage. They were young, barely out of high school, and fueled by a potent cocktail of youthful invincibility and morbid curiosity. Tonight, they were determined to prove their bravery by spending the night in the infamous St. Mary's Asylum, a place steeped in local legend and whispered rumors of hauntings. Jake, the self-proclaimed leader of the group, puffed out his chest and tried to mask his unease with a swagger. "Ready for this, guys?" he asked, his voice betraying a slight tremor. Emily, the resident skeptic, rolled her eyes, her arms crossed defiantly. "Let's just get this over with," she muttered. Ben, the quiet one, simply nodded, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. Chloe, the sensitive one, clutched her boyfriend Ben's arm, her eyes darting nervously around the darkened grounds. "Are you sure about this, babe?" she whispered. The heavy iron gates groaned open with a sound like a death rattle, rust flaking off like scales from a prehistoric beast. Their footsteps echoed eerily in the stillness of the night as they ventured onto the grounds, the only sound the rhythmic chirping of crickets and the distant barking of a dog. The air grew noticeably colder, a damp chill that seeped into their bones. The oppressive atmosphere pressed down on them, suffocating their youthful exuberance. They approached the main entrance, a once grand archway now crumbling and overgrown with ivy, its heavy wooden doors hanging precariously from their rusted hinges. The paint peeled from the walls like scabs, revealing the rotting wood beneath. Above the archway, a stone carving of a tormented angel seemed to leer down at them, its wings clipped, its face contorted in silent agony. Stepping over the threshold, they entered the belly of the beast. The air inside was stagnant and heavy, thick with the smell of decay and the faint cloying scent of mildew. Dust motes danced in the thin beams of moonlight that sliced through the grimy windows, illuminating the decay and neglect that permeated every inch of the asylum. Cobwebs, thick as gauze, draped the walls and hung from the ceilings like macabre decorations. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of their own breathing and the frantic thumping of their hearts. They moved deeper into the asylum, their footsteps echoing down the long, dark corridors. The walls were lined with rows of identical doors, each one leading to a room that had once housed a soul in torment. Some doors stood ajar, offering glimpses into darkened rooms, their shadows seeming to shift and move in the flickering beams of their flashlights. The deeper they ventured, the more unsettling the atmosphere became. The feeling of being watched intensified, sending shivers down their spines. They passed a padded room, its restraints hanging limply, the leather cracked and dry, stained with what looked like blood. On the floor lay a rusty tray, a chipped mug still containing a dried brown residue that sent shivers down their spines. It didn't take much imagination to picture the horrors that had unfolded within those walls. As they moved on, they discovered a communal area, littered with the remnants of forgotten lives. A toppled wheelchair lay near a dusty board game, its pieces scattered across the floor. A rocking chair creaked rhythmically in the breeze from a broken window, as if propelled by an unseen hand. The air grew heavy with the weight of untold suffering, the palpable despair clinging to every surface like cobwebs. The friends stumbled upon a peculiar symbol etched into the dusty floor of one of the rooms. It was a crudely drawn pentagram, its points smudged as if drawn in haste. Within its center lay a pile of small, white objects that, upon closer inspection, turned out to be teeth, human teeth. The sight sent a chill down their spines, their bravado crumbling like the decaying walls around them. Even Emily, the skeptic, couldn't shake off the feeling that something truly sinister had transpired within these walls. Leading away from the room with the pentagram was a trail of blood. It was not a large amount, but it was undeniably blood, its metallic scent sharp in the stale air. It snaked down the corridor, disappearing into the darkness ahead. Fear, primal and instinctive, took root in their hearts. This was no game. Someone or something was watching them. Jake's bravado had long since evaporated, replaced by a growing sense of dread. Emily's skepticism crumbled with each passing shadow, each unexplained sound. Ben's silence grew more pronounced, his fear palpable. Only Chloe dared to voice her terror. "We need to leave," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, let's just go." But it was too late. As if in answer to Chloe's plea, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the asylum, bouncing off the walls, amplified by the oppressive silence. It was a sound of pure terror, raw and primal, and it sent the friends scrambling back in horror, their blood turning to ice in their veins. They huddled together, their flashlights shaking in their trembling hands, casting grotesque shadows that danced and writhed around them. From the depths of the asylum, a figure emerged from the darkness. It moved with an unnatural grace, gliding silently over the cold stone floor. Its form was shrouded in shadow, but the faint outline of a habit was discernible, its white fabric stained a gruesome crimson. A rosary, its beads made of bone, swung from its side, clicking rhythmically against the floor, each click a death knell to their hopes of escape. Then, it stepped into the moonlight streaming through a broken window, and the friends gasped in horror. It was a woman, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes hollow sockets that burned with a cold, malevolent light. Her lips, pulled back in a grotesque parody of a smile, revealed rows of sharp, pointed teeth. Blood matted her habit, staining its once pristine white a horrifying crimson. Panic seized them. They scrambled back, their screams echoing through the asylum, their desperate cries swallowed by the oppressive darkness. They ran blindly, their feet slipping on the dusty floor, their hearts pounding against their ribs like trapped birds. The Bloody Nun moved with an eerie swiftness, her laughter, cold and hollow, echoing behind them. One by one she picked them off. Jake tripped and fell, his screams cut short as the Bloody Nun descended upon him. Emily, her skepticism replaced by primal terror, was cornered in a dead-end corridor, her pleas for mercy drowned out by her own screams. Ben, his quiet demeanor shattered, watched in horror as the Bloody Nun dragged Chloe into the darkness, her screams fading into the distance. Ben, now utterly alone, his sanity hanging by a thread, stumbled through the labyrinthine corridors, his mind fracturing under the weight of the horrors he had witnessed. He could hear the Bloody Nun's laughter echoing all around him, her presence a suffocating weight on his chest. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that he would not escape this place alive. He found himself in the asylum's chapel, a once sacred space now desecrated and defiled. The stained glass windows were shattered, their depictions of saints and angels now grotesque caricatures. The altar was overturned, its white cloth stained with what looked like years of accumulated blood. And there, standing in the center of the chapel, bathed in the eerie glow of the moon, was the Bloody Nun. She turned to face him, her smile widening, her eyes burning with unholy fire. Ben fell to his knees, his spirit broken, his hope extinguished. He closed his eyes, accepting his fate. As the Bloody Nun descended upon him, her laughter echoing in his ears, the last thing he saw was the image of the tormented angel above the entrance, its stone face contorted in a silent scream that mirrored his own. The asylum had claimed its latest victims, their souls forever trapped within its cursed walls. The hunter's moon continued its silent vigil, casting long, eerie shadows over St. Mary's Asylum. The wind howled its mournful song, carrying with it the screams of the damned and the laughter of a vengeful spirit. And within the crumbling walls of the asylum, the Bloody Nun reigned supreme, her thirst for vengeance far from quenched. The curse of St. Mary's lived on.